Everybody, this is the third video in the MAP series. So, first video we talked about kind of what the MAP test is, how do you get your goals, what's all that look like. Second video was more about how you can use the data to really drive instruction. And this video is going to be more student specific, and I'm going to show you some of the resources that I like to use with the students, but also with the parents. And so these are some great resources for parent-teacher conferences, great resources to bring to SIT meeting, that sort of thing. So you're on your home page here. We're going to go to the View Reports, Map Growth Reports. And I'm actually not going to click this through because you can't do it without seeing student names. But once you open up this page, we're going to scroll down. We're going to look at the student profile. So once you click student profile, you'll go through, you'll select the term. So fall, winter, spring of whatever year, right? Select school, that should be selected for you. Instructor is obviously you. For class, I always pick homeroom because it just gives you everything. And then you'll select a student. Now, once you've picked the student and you're actually in the profile, then you can go back and forth between kids in there. You don't have to go to this screen every time. But this is convenient for if you want to look at one specific student, you can click on that. So this is once you click on that, this is the example. So this is just a sample, obviously. And what you have is you've got this screen. I'm going to zoom out, but I'll zoom back in here in a minute. And you have two different tabs. So if I click on math, it'll look very similar to this, except it'll be the math test, obviously. And then right now they have selected reading for us. So if you click on reading, it shows you kind of what's going on there, right? These are color coded. Obviously red is not where you want to be. This kind of yellow, burnt orange, whatever you want to call it, color, they correspond down below to kind of where you want them to be. They correspond with certain levels that you can look at as far as what they may do on the Kansas State assessment, that sort of thing. So as you can imagine, red is there's a lot of work to be done, and yellow is there's still work to be done, right? So this student in particular, fifth grader, Sadie Porter, sample kid, right, fake kid, she scored a 209 on the reading test. And you can see rapid guessing, there's nothing there, so she obviously kind of took her time. It says she took 100 minutes. So it's nice to see when you have a kid who didn't do so well, and then you click through and there's 40 questions and there's reading passages and they took 18 minutes or 25 minutes, and you think, well, did they really take their time? And then if they had rapid guess, sometimes it'll give you a percent. It's usually not very high because it stops them before it gets too high, but it may say 2 or 3%, which means they could have done a little bit better if they had maybe taken their time, but that's just based on algorithms, things like that. So anywho, you click on reading, and I'm going to bypass all of that for just a moment, and you scroll down here, and you won't see this black box yet, but each of these correspond. So obviously here's fall of her third grade year, winter, spring. Hey, that's really good growth. Like, she really improved that year. Okay. Fall of fourth grade, she dropped off a little bit. That's not always, doesn't always happen, but it's not super shocking if a kid drops off a little bit with that winter break. But then if you look at her fourth grade year, 193, 193, 191. What concerns me is not, oh, she dropped 2 points. What concerns me is that's really flat growth. I mean, she just essentially didn't grow. I mean, she dropped. But if you look at it as a whole picture, you don't want that kind of flat line. You want it to be moving up in the right direction. And they have these kind of dots for like the trend lines where you'd want them to be, right? Hey, but fall of fifth grade, she jumped back up to 200, which is where she was at the end of third grade. So we're kind of going back up, and you can see that made just a little bit of growth. Wouldn't have made her goal, but she made a little bit of growth for winter. And then at the end of that year, she has actually improved to a 209. So probably for that year, she probably did actually achieve her growth, because a lot of times the reading goals will be a little bit less than the math goals. That doesn't mean they're not equivalent. So 10 points of growth in math is not equal to 10 points of growth in reading. They each have their own specific goal. So do make sure the kids understand that, because if they grow just a little bit in reading, they may reach their goal or be closer to the goal than if they grow just a little bit in math, if that makes sense. So she scored a 209. If this was active, if this was the actual site, and I clicked right here, it pulls up this black box, and it gives you the RIT score, gives you standard error. So, give or take 3 points, let's say, 60 minutes. So why is it different than up here? Well, this one would be her most recent score, and then this one they've obviously clicked one of her previous tests. So you can see that, so that's why the score is different too, obviously. 24th percentile, it shows you the percentile here, and then it shows you each of her areas of relative strength and relative weakness. So what was her name? Sadie, she did not do quite as well on informational text, specifically the craft and structure of that text, language. She did do really well, same area, but with literature, right? So you can kind of start to see some patterns there. As we go up above, and then same thing, if you clicked on mathematics, all of this would change. It would look the same, but it would have all the math data. So you'd have her math numbers here. One thing I always try to do, so a lot of times we're focused on having our students reach their goal for the end of the year, right? And we can focus on that. That's something we care about and we want that to happen. But when I'm talking with parents and when I'm talking with students, what I like to do is look at the big picture overall. So as I'm doing this, I'm looking at from 182 to 209 on this line here, right? So with Sadie, it looks like, hey, we started off maybe not exactly where we want to be, but had some good growth. She was heading in the right direction, and then we kind of flatlined throughout fourth grade. So something, and there could be more to that story. That's where your relationship with the student and maybe your relationship with the previous teacher, that's where that kind of builds into that, comes into play, right? And so, maybe she had a really tough year. Maybe she really struggled with the concepts. Maybe there was something going on at home, right? We don't know. And so that's where you come in as far as the relationship piece. But then if I was the fifth grade teacher here, I'd be saying, hey, look, she got kind of back to where she was at the start of the year, which is good. So that gives us somewhere to start from. She didn't grow a lot. If this was winter conference, I'd be talking about, hey, like she grew a little bit. That's good. She's moving in the right direction, but we really think she can do more, and we want to push her. And that's where I'd start talking about like what I have planned to do that. But at the end of the year, I would be really, really happy and say, hey, you know what? From 182 to 209, you can see the growth. Yes, she had a kind of a down year, but she had 2 years where she was solidly on the upswing. So at this point, I'd be thinking about what did I do differently, or what did I do that really worked for Sadie that I can pass on to future teachers and pass on to those parents, so they have some idea of, and what happened in fifth grade and in third grade that really worked for Sadie, that maybe didn't work in fourth grade. And it's not a judgment on anybody. We've all had students who outperformed the year before, year after we had them, and we had students where they really performed with us. So it's not a judgment on any teacher. It's just a matter of, there were some certain things in place. It may have been tiered instruction, it may have been interventions, but there was something about this year, and then in particular third grade, that really worked. So let's find what that is so we can keep her on the path to success. Okay, so if we scroll up here, you can see these are her norms percentile. So her growth was above average. Her growth was in the 62nd percentile, comparing from the start of the year to the end of the year, right? Her achievement, 42nd percentile. So if you look up here, that's why this is in that kind of gold color, right? So she's moving into kind of that average range, but she's at the low end of the average range, right? And so she grew a lot, which is great, but she's still not necessarily, grade level. She's kind of in that grade level range, but there's still work to be done. So, if you look here, this is the quadrant chart. It's high growth, low achievement. So she grew a lot, which is something to celebrate, but we still want to make sure we're pushing her to continue to move forward, right? And so if you look over here, I won't be able to click on this, but can I scroll down? They may have something on here. We'll look. But if you look over here, each of these areas have her relative strengths and relative area of focus, with relative weakness, right? Suggested area of focus is a nice way to say that. So she scored 209. But when it comes to literary text and language, craft, the structure of that text, she scored a 219. So she did really well, right? But then if you look at informational text with the same, I guess meaning and context, so not the same, but she scored 198. So she scored significantly below her RIT. So that's the area that we really need to push. You need to push her in every area, but that's the area where she did not, meet her growth, let's say. So with this student, I'd be really happy that she made her growth. I'd be really honest about, hey, where we're at, but where we can be based on what we need to work on. And I would really push her to continue in these areas, but then I might look at the areas of focus. So the cool thing about this, though, is if you click on this, and this is a dead link, obviously, but if I click on this and scroll, I'm going to scroll, so this would actually take you to another page, but it's going to show you some of these different areas, and it'll tell you what she's ready to develop. And this one doesn't show it, but it will also show like, hey, at this skill, she tested at a 3rd grade level. At this skill, she tested at a 6th grade level. And so you can actually go in and use this in conjunction with the learning continuum, and you can do a lot of cool things as far as focusing. When we talk about here in Shawnee Mission, we talk about those individual plans of study. It's like, this is where you can start to focus, like, what does this particular student need? So moving over here to the family report, this is just a sample. This is something that you could print and send home, and it's really good. So it has a nice explanation of what is a RIT score, what is my, why is she taking the test, why is he taking the test, what is map growth, and then the things that you talked about from that student profile that you talked about in that conference, this is where you can send that home, right? And so in math, this particular student had average achievement, 47th percentile. You can see the last few scores just so you can get a little bit of that big picture, and then but high growth. So this student started much lower. Let's see if we're gonna, I don't know if this is fall to winter, but they started at 178 and now they're at 200. So they went from being very way below grade level to being right about on grade level, and that's huge growth. If you look at reading, kind of the same thing. Like, they did have some growth, but if you look over here, they did high average growth. It wasn't like extreme, but they still grew quite a bit from that 185 to being up here around 200. And then their achievement was right in the 50th percentile. So that would be what I would consider to be right on grade level. So this is something you can print out and actually send home with the parents. And I always like to write some notes on it or send some things that they can work on too for those who are interested. Okay, final piece of the puzzle for this video, the student progress report. You can click on this, and this is again a sample, and this one's actually looking at fall to fall. But if you look here, this was fall of 15, you can actually go back and look at every score. You can look at their growth, you can look at their percentile, so that this is just another way to give you that wider, bigger picture, right? So this is a student who in the fall of 3rd grade was in the 63rd percentile, then 34, 56, 36, 51, 34, 40, 32, 49, 48, 33. You go all the way down. And so, well, what does that tell you? What does it matter what they scored before? Well, it doesn't necessarily matter, where they were at in 3rd grade when you have them in 5th grade or 6th grade or whatever it may be. But what does matter is I can look at that and see that, when I went to that student profile, this student would be kind of all over the map. Low score, high score, low score, high score. So I'd really want to focus on, what causes that? What can we do to have more consistency? And it also informs you. So if a student scored a little bit higher in the fall and a little bit lower in the winter, you might just think, well, they've rebounded before, so this is not new, but you're still going to focus on how can I improve the score and look at the areas the student needs help in, but it just gives you a little bit more of that perspective. So then same thing here with reading. So this is something that I have pulled up. I've printed this before. I really like the well, that's not it, but I really like the family report to be able to send home. But these are all the pieces where you can kind of put it together in a way that's easy to understand for families. And this is information, some of this information I do share with the students, and I just present it in a student friendly way. So anyway, thank you for watching. That's all I have on this. I think we'll have one more video, but this is all about looking at that individual student, and then how can I move? Oh, there's one more thing I want to show you actually. How can I move that needle? So one other thing, if you do the Khan Academy mappers, when you are on the student profile and it has when you have to put in the different scores, this is also where you'd find those scores. So then if you put in these individual scores, it will target instruction to them. So that's another good, something you could do as potentially an intervention, but I would say more of, it could be enrichment. It could be something that they can work on when they have some downtime. So anyway, thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later.